This talk introduces forms of printing. The artist Michael Rothenstein once remarked that the essence of printing is an embrace, one body pressed against another. Printing always involves some form of matrix, a woodcut or artist-designed shoes, both shown here, which through pressure makes it possible to create a repeatable image. While pressure is an example of most printing, the matrix is what is essential. The earliest stencil may actually be the human hand, used as a stencil to mask pigment applied to cave walls by early humans. The stencil continues to be part of our built environment today. There are 4 traditional forms of printing, shown here in this slide. Relief and intaglio in the first 2 columns are essentially the inverse of each other, with relief inking the top surface and intaglio inking the incised portions of a plate. Lithography in the 3rd column is based on chemical principles of separation between greasy ink and water, and the screen print is basically a stencil method, shown in the right column. One cannot talk about the development of printing without acknowledging the importance of paper. Originating in China 1,000 years ago, the production of paper from cotton in Europe was critical to the development of printing in the West. Relief printing was also an export from China. Both of these examples show the religious uses of printing, be they Buddhist or Christian. As a repeated image, prints function as a way of propagating religious, political, and social belief systems. A common example is the Gutenberg Bible, emblematic of the Protestant Reformation, which used movable relief-printed type to replicate the biblical text. Significant to early science were woodcuts of plants, which served to advance early botanical classifications. Here are 2 well-known examples of relief printing, a 16th century woodcut by Albrecht Dürer and a 20th century woodcut by Käthe Kollwitz. Both of these Germanic artists were using woodcut as an art form that reflected their times. A second form of printing is intaglio, a gravure process, which it's sometimes referred to as, which involves engraving or etching into a plate. Then ink is applied to the whole plate surface, wiped off the top, and the image is printed then as it's transferred to dampened paper. Most often, engraving is used for printed currency. And in this detail from a US dollar, you can see this syntax of lines that form the engraved image. Etching involves an acid-resistant ground on the plate, through which the artist, in this case Rembrandt, creates the drawing using a sharp needle. When the image is completed, the plate is put in a bath of acid so that the acid eats away at the exposed portion of the plate to create the incised areas in the plate surface. Another intaglio method is mezzotint, a reductive technique. Mezzotint involves the use of a steel rocker with fine teeth, which is rocked back and forth on the plate to create a rich texture. The image is made with a scraper and other tools so that the plate can be rendered smoother to create lighter values in the image. In the 18th century, mezzotint was used for portraiture extensively. During the Enlightenment in the 18th century, engraving advanced scientific and technical knowledge, as reflected in Diderot's Encyclopedia shown on the left, and provided a way for artists such as William Hogarth to make art that commented on the social issues of the day and provided art for a growing middle class. In the 20th century, the British printmaker Stanley William Hayter was known for his experimental uses of intaglio printing, often working spontaneously and connecting the use of this process to modernism and surrealism. The third form of printing on our tour through forms of printing is lithography, which was invented in Germany by Alois Senefelder in 1798, and is based on the principle that grease and water do not mix. This process is sometimes referred to as planographic and involves chemical processing of the stone to prepare it for printing. In lithography, the artist draws the image on a fine limestone with a grease pencil, and after being processed, the stone can be dampened with a sponge, inked, and printed. The historic image on the left shows several different grease pencils and their holders. On the right, Cynthia Osborne, a contemporary artist, shows her drawing methods. Lithography allowed for a high level of production, so Henri Daumier could produce thousands of political cartoons critical of Louis Philippe, the last king of France, on the left, and Toulouse-Lautrec could make color posters that lined the streets of Paris. As an art form, lithography is very flexible and has been used by Picasso for a state-proof series of bowls, as a rich drawing medium by African-American artist Charles White, shown on the lower left, and a print by Robert Rauschenberg that uses a photo transfer to a lithographic stone of an X-ray of the artist's body. The finished print was 6 feet tall. A fourth and the final form of traditional printing is screen print, sometimes called silkscreen or serigraphy. By any name, this is fundamentally a stencil method, with the stencil often applied to fabric, typically nylon, stretched on a frame. Using a squeegee, the ink can be pushed through the stencil to create the print. Andy Warhol is best known for his screen prints, which often borrowed from commercial imagery and subjects. The Warhol screen prints found in the art gallery often have a close resemblance to the Warhol-inspired swag you might find at the museum gift shop. Today, many artists use screen print for both art and design work. Here we see wallpaper printing at Flavor Paper in Brooklyn, New York, and a poster for Widespread Panic by Knoxville-based designer Justin Helton. To review, each of these forms of printing, relief, which involves printing from the upper surface of a matrix, which could be a woodcut, linocut, wood engraving, and so forth. Intaglio, which involves printing from the incised or etched portions of a plate, which could be engraving, dry point, mezzotint, and etching. Lithography, a planographic process, which is printed from limestone or aluminum, or a stencil method such as screen print. All of these methods have their own materials and processes and histories. Each is a different image-making tool. What you do with these forms of printing is up to you.